Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to take a necessary pause, a quiet look at a topic that honestly feels defined by nothing but noise and speed.
Mm.
And that's the mental landscape of young people across North America.
It's such a crucial examination. I mean, the state of the emerging generation really dictates the direction of the entire continent, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And we're diving into some really powerful observations today.
We are. We're opening the latest reflections from Lóng Tíng, who is just a remarkable voice. He operates in that quiet intersection between ancient East Asian thought and the intense demands of the contemporary Western world.
Right, that blend is so unique.
It is. His work is truly transnational. He's observing these patterns of, well, youth stability and struggle across major urban hubs.
And not just in one or two places.
No, everywhere, from the high-stakes environments of New York and Toronto to the really fast-moving sort of identity-shifting ecosystems you find in Vancouver, Chicago, LA, Oslo.
That geographic scope is so important because it tells you right away this isn't a local issue.
It's systemic.
Exactly. And our core mission today, really built around Ting's work, is to unpack this single central truth he's identified.
And it's a profound one.
It is. The idea is that North American youth, they're not ultimately held back by a lack of potential. They have tons of it.
Oh, absolutely. They possess it in spades.
But they're constrained by something far more debilitating and really pervasive: internal fragmentation.
Dissolution, he calls it.
Yes. So our goal is to understand how that happens and, maybe more importantly, to chart a practical path back towards grounding.
That framing is essential. And Ting, he sets the scene just perfectly with an observation that I think we can all recognize, no matter our age.
What's that?
He describes that moment when the world just suddenly feels, and this is his phrase, too loud to truly hear yourself.
I know that feeling.
We all do. And while the external promise of North America, all that opportunity seems infinite on the surface, for the young person trying to navigate it, that same promise feels terrifyingly slippery underneath.
Terrifyingly slippery.
Yeah.
How? That captures the core insecurity of this generation perfectly, doesn't it?
It really does.
You're standing at the edge of the world, you see all these possibilities, but the ground beneath your feet feels like it's turning to liquid because of anxiety and just speed.
It's not just about finding a job or a place to live. It's an existential crisis of feeling completely unmoored.
For sure. And like you said, this is the shared, quiet question trembling in the bones for young people in all these hyper-competitive cities. How do you even begin to build a future, a real, authentic future, when the culture demands you move too fast to even take a breath?
And if we don't understand the source of that speed, that instability, we just misdiagnose the problem. We attribute it to, I don't know, laziness or some kind of moral failure.
I mean, it's not that at all.
Not at all. It's a structural, psychological response to a completely unnatural environment.
Okay, so let's start where Ting starts. This defining crisis. He completely reframes how we talk about success and failure for young people.
He does.
His argument, and this is really the crux of it, is that potential is not the problem. Not even close.
Right. And you look at them on paper. They're the most educated, most globally aware, most digitally native generation in history. The potential is undeniable.
So what is the problem then?
It's direction. Ting is so emphatic about this. The issue isn't capacity. It is direction.
Can you break that down a bit?
Yeah, imagine you have a state-of-the-art sports car.
Right.
Incredible potential, right? But you have no map and no compass.
You're not going anywhere meaningful.
Exactly. You can drive really, really fast, but all you're doing is burning fuel and making noise. And when that essential direction is missing, focus, which is just the sustained application of energy toward one meaningful end, it becomes functionally impossible.
And without focus.
That potential it dissipates. It scatters into 1,000 small, frantic attempts at everything and nothing.
And what's driving this lack of direction is what he calls fragmentation, or that internal dissolution. Let's get into the specifics of this, because it's not just being busy, is it?
Oh, not at all. It's a relentless, structural pull on the inner self. He details 4 specific, really aggressive sources that just tear the self apart.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, there's just too much noise. an overwhelming volume of it, constantly drowning out that inner dialogue that you need for self-reflection.
And we're not just talking about loud music or news channels.
No, no, it's the constant buzzing demand of notifications. It's the training of the brain to prioritize every external urgency over any kind of internal coherence.
Okay, that makes sense. What's number two?
The second is too much comparison. I mean, we've moved so far beyond just, keeping up with the Joneses.
It's not your neighbor's new car anymore.
It's not. Now, success is instantly broadcast, filtered, curated, and streamed across global feeds. And this endless river of highly edited, seemingly effortless achievement, it creates this deeply corrosive feeling of personal inadequacy.
Right, you're not just comparing your messy real life to your neighbor's. You're comparing your unfiltered reality to like a billion carefully constructed highlight reels.
A billion highlight reels.
Yeah.
That's exactly. It's the tyranny of the visible.
Yeah.
You only ever see the final result. You never see the decade of quiet, grinding work that went into it.
Okay, so noise, comparison. What's the third source of fragmentation?
Too many expectations. And what's worse is that these expectations are often completely contradictory.
How so?
Well, the family might demand stability, a safe career, high status, but the culture demands disruption and entrepreneurial risk.
And your own self is just demanding to be happy.
And to be happy right now. So navigating that contradictory landscape is just, it's exhausting.
It's a setup for failure almost. You can't
Right.
please all of them.
You can't. Which leads to the final source.
Yeah.
The pressure to perform a version of themselves.
It's a curated self.
It's a curated self.
Yeah.
And King notes this is a survival mechanism. It's designed explicitly to earn external approval likes, academic praise, a promotion, job security. But that version rarely, if ever, brings internal peace. Because to maintain it, you have to constantly deny the true, the vulnerable, the unpolished self.
And that denial, that performance, it brings us right to the paradox of North America itself. The foundational myth is all about boundless opportunity, the self-made person.
The ability to build anything from nothing.
Right. But for this generation, that dream is just overshadowed by these huge structural obstacles that make the ground feel so slippery.
It's the massive gap between the myth and the economic reality they're living in.
Could you give us some examples of that gap?
I mean, where to start? Staggering academic debt that forces them into immediate high-paying work, regardless of passion or fit.
You can't afford to explore.
No. They enter these hyper-competitive job markets that, hilariously ask for 10 years of experience for an entry-level role. They face unprecedented inequality, chronic burnout, because they have to work 2 or 3 side hustles just to pay rent.
And on top of all that, there's this fear.
The terror of falling behind. And it's not just a feeling, it's a structural anxiety that infects every single decision, from which college to go to which city you can even afford to live in.
So when Ting listens to them in all these different cities, what does that emotional feedback loop sound like? What are the phrases he hears over and over?
It sounds like velocity and loss. The most common phrases aren't even necessarily about depression, but about overwhelm and disorientation.
Like what?
I'm overwhelmed, which really just means I have too many inputs and no way to filter them.
Right.
Then there's everyone is moving so fast, which just reflects that cultural pressure cooker. And then I think the most deeply disorienting one, I don't know what's real anymore. That one speaks directly to the blurring lines between their online performance, all the societal expectations, and their genuine internal state.
And even the high achievers, the ones who seem to be winning.
The ones who are performing perfectly.
Yes. They're the ones who confess, I worked so hard, but I still feel lost.
Which just proves that they're working like crazy, but in a state of deep misalignment with whatever their core values are.
Exactly. It's motion without meaning. And all this brings us to the cause of that velocity, the unnatural pace of life. Ting, who's looking at this culture through the lens of, ancient, slower thought, argues very clearly. The pace of North America is an aberration.
An aberration.
It is not historically or biologically normal for human beings.
That's such a critical statement, because when you're living inside it, you just assume this is the default setting for modern life.
We normalize it.
We do.
Yeah.
But you're saying it's a specific localized cultural addiction to speed. Can you help us understand the mechanics of that cultural mistake? The core mistake is that we mistake speed for progress. We've completely forgotten that genuine progress often requires stillness, reflection, time for ideas to gestate.
Right. Things need to marinate.
They do. Instead, this acceleration is now visible everywhere a young person operates. Think about the news cycles. They're instantaneous. They demand immediate reaction, immediate outrage.
It keeps you in a constant state of low-grade emergency.
That's the perfect way to put it. And social feeds, they refresh every second, demanding not just your attention, but your response, your production. You have to contribute.
And the professional world is just as bad, if not worse.
Oh, absolutely. Career expectations demand this rapid, totally unsustainable scaling. The whole gig economy thrives on instant responsiveness, which just erodes any boundary between work and rest.
And academic pressure.
Is relentless. It's all tied to these inflated GPA metrics that demand perfection, not genuine learning or curiosity. And underpinning all of it is this permanent cultural demand to be on.
Always available.
Always responsive, productive, available. The work device is your personal device. The office is your bedroom. There's no escape.
It's a constant storm of manufactured urgency, isn't it? And the unspoken rule is, if you stop, you lose.
Exactly. And this drives the second, and I think more damaging cultural mistake. Busyness becomes your identity.
Oh, that's a big one.
It is. If a young person isn't running, if they admit they're slowing down or even just pausing to think, they immediately fear they're not relevant or successful or ambitious enough.
So what's the psychological consequence of that?
It's profound. Slowing down feels equivalent to failure. The moment you pause, all the anxiety of what you should be doing just rushes in to fill the space.
And social media just pours gasoline on that fire?
It does. It presents these illusions of instant success, viral fame, careers built overnight, which makes the slow, quiet, foundational work of building character feel obsolete, like a waste of time.
The outcome seems inevitable then.
It is. Anxiety spikes, attention fractures, the mind scatters. And it leads directly back to the fragmentation we started with. We are, in effect, training an entire generation to be biologically incapable of stillness.
It sounds like we've collectively built a kind of psychological centrifuge, spinning the emerging generation so fast that their sense of self literally separates from their external presentation. Okay, so if the culture is designed to shatter our attention, let's unpack the antidote. What does Ting offer as the protective measure?
He offers a really powerful redefinition of focus, one that moves it completely out of the realm of, being a demanding virtue and places it firmly in the realm of personal security.
Okay.
He tells his students that focus is not a virtue you have to perform. It is safety.
Safety. I love that. That is a beautiful and really necessary reframe.
Isn't it?
It transforms the act of focusing from this chore, this willpower exercise, into an act of self-protection.
Precisely. Focus is the shield. It's what protects your inner life, your authentic self, from dissolving into everyone else's noise and their conflicting expectations.
It maintains the integrity of the self.
Exactly. In a world that demands constant outward validation, this shield is what holds you together.
So how do you build that shield? I mean, the theory is great, but what does it look like on a daily basis?
It requires setting specific, non-negotiable boundaries, particularly around the input streams that cause the fragmentation in the first place.
The phones.
Phones, notifications, email, all of it. We have to intentionally schedule digital detox protocols. And not just, once in a while, but structurally, part of the routine.
Where devices are actually powered down, not just on silent.
Yes, that's a key distinction. Powered down, allowing the inner voice to finally rise above the exterior clamor. It's about creating intentional friction, putting real barriers between your time and the culture's relentless demands on your time.
So the whole philosophy shifts. It goes from, I have to check this constantly so I don't miss out, to something else.
It shifts to, I must protect my concentration so I can build something meaningful. Focus is literally saying, I will choose one primary important thing today, and I will protect the time and mental space to do it, even if the world is screaming at me to choose 10.
And that one choice, made over and over.
That's what provides the psychological and spiritual stability to withstand the hurricane of North American philosophy. It stabilizes the ground beneath their feet. It gives them a place to stand. So now we can shift from that internal fragmentation to how this instability shows up in their relationships and their external behavior, specifically in communication.
Okay.
Ting notes a really critical deficit here. He says that while everyone can talk, very, very few, especially among youth who've grown up communicating mainly through screens, can truly listen.
And when you lose the ability to listen, to really receive information.
Communication collapses. It just becomes performance and noise.
That's profound. We've basically created a generation that is an expert at broadcasting, at self-promotion, at sharing information, but is really stunted when it comes to reception.
And that leads directly to what he calls the empty performance.
What does that gap between broadcasting and receiving actually look like in person?
It's the huge distinction between intellectual confidence and internal emptiness. You'll see young people who can speak with incredible eloquence. They're skilled debaters. They can argue endlessly about abstract political or social issues,
No.
but they are utterly unable to express their immediate personal fears or vulnerabilities to another trusted person.
So they can handle complexity in the abstract, but they just stumble when the conversation gets personal and real.
Exactly. They post their lives online in extraordinary detail, achievements, social events, relationship updates, yet they confess to having no one, not one person, they genuinely trust offline to hold their real anxieties without judgment.
They're masters of content creation, but novices at connection.
That's a perfect summary.
The specific anecdotes Ting shares about this really highlight the devastating power of this isolation, even when you're surrounded by what looks like a thriving social life.
They're heartbreaking.
Can we walk through those 3 student examples?
Certainly. The first one is the student in California, which is, the epicenter of digital connection. He confessed that he feels connected to everyone and no one.
Connected to everyone and no one. What does that even mean in practice?
It means you have thousands of followers or friends or connections, but you have zero anchors. You can see what everyone else is doing at all times, but you can't truly be with anyone, including yourself.
It's a spectator life. Okay, what about the second example?
That's the young woman in Toronto, a very high-achieving academic. And she explained that she could explain anything but express nothing.
Wow.
Her mind was this formidable engine of analysis, but her emotional literacy, her ability to translate feeling into truthful, vulnerable human language, had been completely stunted by years of prioritizing intellectual performance over relational intimacy.
So she built a career on what she knew, but she couldn't share who she was.
Precisely. And the final one is the young queer student in the Midwest who had learned a really painful survival mechanism early on.
Which one?
To speak around the truth, but not through it.
Hmm.
And this is such a deeply ingrained coping strategy in polarized or unwelcoming environments. You learn to speak in generalities, to hide your true convictions, to filter your identity just to remain palatable or safe.
And while that might be necessary for survival, it's ultimately destructive to your sense of self.
It creates a profound internal fracture.
So if the default is this kind of performance, what does Ting define as real connection? What are the ingredients?
He says true communication requires 5 fundamental qualities. First is presence. Just being truly there, not half listening while you're waiting for your phone to buzz.
Okay.
Second is softness. The courage to approach difficult topics without being aggressive, seeking understanding over just winning the argument.
That's a hard one.
Very. Third is honesty, and not just being truthful, but real emotional sincerity. Fourth is context understanding, the full human story behind the person who is speaking. And critically, the fifth one is giving space instead of always taking it.
It's about listening more than you talk.
At its core, yes, it demands the courage to be seen without all the filters, digital or emotional, that we learn to hide behind. It's an act of grounded vulnerability.
Yeah.
And this reliance on performance, coupled with the collapse in real communication, brings us to the next critical reframing from Ting.
Okay.
We have to address this common societal misinterpretation of youth behavior, what is so widely seen and dismissed as a lack of discipline, or just plain laziness.
Right, the kids these days argument.
Exactly. Is, in reality, profound chronic exhaustion.
That distinction, exhaustion, not laziness, that is absolutely vital.
Why do you say that?
Because the way we diagnose the problem completely dictates the solution we offer. If we think they're lazy, we just prescribe more hustle, more discipline.
Right, we tell them to grind harder.
But if we realize they're depleted, we prescribe rest and boundaries. Totally different approach.
And Ting is adamant on this point. It is not laziness. It is depletion. And it's caused by functioning in a state of chronic emotional overload before the day has even really begun.
Yeah.
The internal buzzing just never stops.
So let's detail the sources of that depletion. What's causing this chronic overload?
It's layered, and it is relentless. It's the overstimulation from devices and media. It's long, non-traditional work hours just to cover the cost of living.
It's the weight of the academic debt.
The immense weight of that debt.
Yeah.
The continuous economic uncertainty, knowing they may never achieve the stability their parents had. There's the crushing pressure of often unattainable family expectations.
And that's just the personal stuff.
But that's just the personal stuff. You layer on top of that the external existential stressors, the paralyzing dread of climate anxiety, deep struggles around identity and social belonging, pervasive racial tension,
And the political polarization.
the exhausting, constant political polarization that makes just opening social media feel like you're stepping onto a verbal battlefield.
It's a full spectrum stress environment. I mean, they're being asked to solve global crises, manage personal debt, and maintain a perfect GPA, all before they're 25.
It is an impossible energy drain.
It is.
And when your brain and your body are functioning under that level of perpetual low-grade stress, they seek relief. They have to.
And this is where distraction comes in.
This is where distraction steps in, and it transforms from just a pastime into a necessary coping mechanism. Scrolling becomes the easy escape hatch.
And content becomes medication.
It absolutely becomes psychological medication for anxiety. It offers these immediate, certain little dopamine hits, whereas real life offers complexity and slow, uncertain progress.
So the escape is actually a rational choice in the context of the overload. They run to distraction because the real world feels too demanding, too painful.
Which leads to Ting's central warning, and this is for anyone trying to build a meaningful life.
Yeah.
You cannot build a future that you keep running away from.
Even if you're just running silently, hiding behind a phone screen.
Or a wall of busyness. He says they don't need more pressure or more motivational speeches or more hustle culture telling them to achieve impossible things.
So what do they need?
They need breath. They need internal stability. And most practically, they need fewer leaks in their energy. They need to stem the constant flow of emotional and psychological output that prevents them from ever refilling their reserves.
We've established the depth of the fragmentation, the exhaustion. So now we get to the crucial pivot. How does this generation move forward? Lóng Tíng argues that before any young person can truly claim their life, find that direction we talked about, they have to take this almost radical step in our performative culture.
They have to meet themselves.
Exactly, have to meet themselves.
It's this quiet process of self-reflection, right? An
Yeah.
internal inventory. But that process is routinely swallowed by the external demand for success, for performance.
So the problem is that young people are taught from day one how to optimize for external metrics, grades, applications, social standing,
But they're never taught how to simply sit and listen to their own inner state.
which creates this profound internal dissonance, this knowledge gap that just fuels their confusion.
It does. It creates a whole series of contradictions.
Okay, let's break down that knowledge gap. What do those contradictions look like?
Well, for example, they know their college major or their career track, but they have no defined sense of their core values, the non-negotiable principles that are supposed to guide their life,
They know their resume inside and out.
listing every single achievement. But they often have no clear understanding of their fundamental emotional or physical needs. Are they an introvert being forced to live an extrovert's life? Are they ignoring physical pain just to hit a deadline?
They know how to argue a point.
Brilliantly. But they lack the ability to listen inward to their own discomfort, their own fear, their own gut feelings. And maybe most tragically, they know how to achieve, they know how to earn that external validation.
But they have no idea how to rest.
They've completely lost the knowledge of how to truly rest. Not just sleep, but intentional regenerative rest that reconnects the body and the mind.
It really sounds like a structural flaw in modern education. We're teaching them to be excellent external performers, but terrible internal navigators.
That's it exactly. And this is where Ting introduces what he calls the quiet questions.
Okay.
And they're designed specifically to pierce that performance veil and force some real internal honesty. I think these are worth spending some time on.
Let's do it. What's the first question?
The first one is, who are you when no one is grading you?
That's a tough one.
It challenges them to identify the self that exists outside of academia or the workplace. If your whole identity is built on achievement, what happens when you inevitably fail or just decide to rest? It forces a confrontation with your inherent self-worth.
It's deeply challenging because for so many, I think the answer is just silence. They don't know that person yet.
Precisely. The second question, what do you want when no one is watching?
That gets at the difference between real desire and what you're supposed to want.
It separates genuine desire from socially conditioned ambition. Are you pursuing that high-status career because you actually love the work, or because your parents or your Instagram feed told you this is what success looks like?
It reveals your true motivation.
It does. The third one is powerful. What wounds do you carry beneath your competence?
Oh, wow.
This recognizes that every high achiever carries pain past, hurts, self-doubt, family trauma. Competence is often built not just on strength, but as a way to compensate for a deep vulnerability.
So by acknowledging the wound,
You stop spending all your energy hiding it, and you can start healing it. The energy you use to hide the wound is energy that's not available for building your future.
that's a crucial insight. Okay, what's next?
Fourth, what strengths do you hide because they're not rewarded by the current system?
Like creativity or empathy.
Exactly. Creative, intuitive, or nurturing strengths that might get dismissed in a purely analytical or quantitative environment. Ting encourages them to reclaim those quiet strengths, whether the market values them or not, because they are essential to living a whole life.
And the final question.
The final and maybe most critical question: which dreams are truly yours, and which belong to your parents, your culture, or simply your fear?
This is the ultimate question of agency, isn't it?
It is. Are you living a life of your own design, or are you just following a blueprint that was handed to you out of expectation or out of a fear of disappointing others?
These questions are the rudder. If you can't answer them, you're steering this powerful ship with no destination that's actually yours.
Self-knowledge isn't optional, it's the absolute foundation.
Yeah.
Without it, young people are just destined to drift, swept along by the current of expectations and speed. But with that foundation, even a small, seemingly insignificant beginning becomes incredibly powerful
Why?
because it's rooted in authenticity, and it can't be easily shaken by outside judgment.
This leads us to a really fascinating and deeply contradictory cultural challenge. The profound fear of asking for help, which exists despite North American culture constantly praising individualism and independence.
It's the great paradox.
It is. Why, in a culture that celebrates the whole self-made narrative, is it so hard for young people to reach out?
Because the cultural narrative itself is the source of the problem. That overwhelming emphasis on self-reliance fosters this sense that needing help isn't a normal part of being human,
But that it's a character flaw.
a fundamental character flaw. To ask for help is to admit you have failed the test of independence.
Okay, but let me challenge that for a second. Given the reality we just talked about, the debt, the hypercompetition, isn't this culture of ruthless self-reliance almost economically necessary?
That's an excellent and necessary question.
I mean, if they don't build these individual castles of success, how do they survive? Is Ting asking them to abandon realism?
No, I think he would argue that true realism recognizes that no complex system is built alone. The whole concept of the self-made person is largely a myth. Everyone stands on the shoulders of mentors, teachers, supportive networks.
So the system demands isolation.
But true sustainability requires interdependence. The young person is afraid to ask for help because they believe the culture will punish them for it, even though the practical reality is that success is impossible without it.
Okay, so what are the specific reasons Ting sees for this reluctance?
He identifies several barriers. First, many feel they're just unworthy of support. They believe their struggles are minor or self-inflicted, which is a direct side effect of comparison culture.
My problems aren't as bad as theirs.
Exactly. Second, they're deeply ashamed. They see needing guidance as proof that they are weak or failing in this competitive world,
They're afraid of appearing vulnerable.
which can be weaponized against you in a high-stakes setting. And maybe most commonly, they are just uncertain if their quiet, small voice even matters in a society that only seems to reward the loudest, most impressive successes.
So we have to redefine what it means to ask for help. If the culture defines it as weakness.
Ting offers an immediate redefinition for this generation. Leadership begins with reaching out.
I like that.
It requires recognizing that leadership is not about having all the answers or standing alone. It is about navigating immense complexity, which absolutely requires seeking counsel, collaboration, and vulnerability.
The act of asking is the leadership move.
And the vulnerability it takes to ask for help is the very thing that builds relational trust, which is the foundational currency of real leadership.
He also tries to deconstruct the fear around the answer, right? The fear of hearing no.
Yes, he insists that the outcome of asking the yes or the no is totally irrelevant to the process of growth.
That's a big mindset shift.
It is. A no is not your identity. A yes is not your salvation. What truly shapes you is the willingness to keep asking, to keep learning, to keep opening yourself up, and to keep trying again, regardless of the immediate result.
That tenacity combined with humility.
That is what builds the grounded character needed to lead in the face of all this complexity.
Okay, so if the problem is speed and fragmentation, Ting also provides the blueprint for reversal. He is very clear on this. The future of North America will not be built through more noise, more speed, or more frantic activity. It will be built through specific, intentional shifts in how we live and how we apply our energy.
And these intentional shifts, they require adopting specific pillars to counteract that culture of acceleration, moving from reactive living to intentional living.
Okay, so what's the first pillar?
The first is intention itself, the conscious, deliberate application of energy toward a predefined, authentic goal. It's moving with purpose, not just for the sake of movement.
Got it. And the second?
Boundaries, the necessary self-imposed limits to protect that precious energy. This is a practical resistance to the 24/7 on culture.
So like actually deciding your work notifications stop after 7 p.m.
Even if your colleagues keep working,
Yeah.
you protect the internal space you need for reflection.
And the third pillar you mentioned, emotional literacy. That feels really important for a generation conditioned to suppress vulnerability. What does that look like in practice?
Emotional literacy is the ability to understand, label, and articulate your internal state with nuance, instead of just saying, I'm fine, or I'm stressed.
So going deeper.
Much deeper. It means first, identifying subtle somatic stress. Recognizing the tightness in your shoulders might be fear, not just muscle strain. Second, it's distinguishing between similar feelings, like anxiety versus excitement.
Which can feel almost identical physically.
They can. An emotionally literate person can say, I'm not anxious about this presentation. I'm actually excited, but my body is confusing the high adrenaline. And third, it's learning to label those feelings precisely.
So instead of, I'm sad.
You can say, I feel a profound sense of anticipatory grief because of the climate crisis, or I feel resentful because I failed to set a necessary boundary. That clarity gives you agency over your internal world.
Clarity provides agency. That's the key. Once you can name it, you can deal with it.
Absolutely. Which brings us to the fourth pillar, clarity and connection. Knowing who you are, that's clarity, and relating truthfully to others, that's connection. These four pillars are the foundation.
And this requires a pretty profound cultural resistance, a real shift in values.
A huge shift. They must actively resist the overwhelming pressure to burn out, choosing long-term sustainability over short-term spectacle.
Choosing depth over spectacle.
Yes. Prioritizing the slow, often unseen work of skill mastery and character building over the highly performative viral moment that gives you instant but fleeting validation.
And crucially,
They have to learn to collaborate across backgrounds, identities, and ideologies. The current focus on hyper-individualized competition has to shift toward building genuine community.
that reframing of competition into community feels like the core of the solution, really. Building shared capacity, not just individual success stories.
And this leads directly to the final understanding of leadership. Leadership in this grounded generation isn't defined by the loudest voice or the person with the most followers.
It's defined by
The most grounded presence. The person who can hold complexity, who can stay centered amid chaos, and who can move with measured ethical intention even when the storm is raging around them. They lead by being a stable center. So we arrive at the quiet call to action, the final wisdom that Lóng Tíng delivers across all these different North American cities. He reminds every young person he meets of this one fundamental truth, which is meant to counteract that pressure of perfectionism. You do not need to be extraordinary to begin.
you just need to begin.
You just need to begin.
That immediately lowers the impossible bar that causes so much paralysis. You don't have to wait until you've paid off your debt or reached some arbitrary level of expertise to start moving in the right direction.
And how you begin is just as important as what you begin. He emphasizes that the movement must have four qualities.
Okay, what are they?
First, begin slowly. Resist that urge for instant momentum. Recognize that foundational work is measured in seasons, not in seconds. Begin imperfectly. Embrace the messiness of the first step. Understand that learning is inherently a process of iteration and error.
It's okay to not get it right the first time.
It's essential. Third, begin without applause. Internal validation, that alignment with yourself, is infinitely more meaningful than external noise. Focus on your internal barometer of truth, not the external count of likes.
And the last one feels like the most important of all.
Begin even while afraid. Fear is not the signal to stop. It's just part of the landscape of any honest human endeavor. You move with the fear. not against it.
So the ultimate message here for overcoming this tyranny of speed and fragmentation is simple, really.
You do not need to run.
You need to move with purpose, with heart, with patience. The fragmentation that young people feel, it's not their ultimate fate.
Not at all. North America's youth is awakening. And its awakening begins with a powerful conscious choice. To focus, to stay grounded, to grow, and ultimately to lead from a place of centered clarity.
So, what does this all mean for those of us listening or observing or maybe actively mentoring this next generation? The ultimate metric of a generation, according to Ting, is not how loudly it talks about change.
But how quietly, consistently, and courageously it builds the world that does not yet exist.
That's powerful.
And these reflections, they're not just isolated observations, they flow directly into the broader work of Global Leadership Insights 2030, a project focused on defining the leadership qualities we need for the coming decade.
Qualities like presence, clarity,
Ethical grounding, intercultural awareness. These are no longer soft skills. They are essential tools for survival and success. The future leaders must be the ones who can stand in the quiet center of immense noise.
The provocative thought we want to leave you with today builds right on that insight. The future will not belong to those who shout the loudest, the ones who operate at maximum speed and chaos, but to those who walk with intention and stay long enough for their footsteps to truly matter. So as you finish listening, maybe consider which voices in your own life, right now, are the most grounded, not necessarily the loudest. And which direction are you consciously choosing to move when the world demands you run frantically in 10 different directions at once?
Choose the direction that offers you safety, breath, and clarity. That is the true measure of your intention.
Thank you for joining us for this crucial deep dive into the architecture of focus. We encourage you to take this knowledge and actively find your own quiet starting point wherever you are. We'll be back soon to continue the conversation.